Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Katie Fensky, and like always, I'm here to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake. Today, I have on friends and podcast hosts, Stephanie Cooley and Vanessa Anderson. They are the hosts of their own podcast, Real Motherfuckers Podcast. So their catchphrase is, they are real, they are moms, and they F up too. So, is this not the perfect pairing for my podcast? I absolutely loved chatting with these two. I always love when an episode just feels real natural and it's just like a chat between friends and it just flows and we banter. And that's exactly what today's conversation was. We talked about what motherhood felt like when we first became moms, how it's like making mom friends, some of our big mom fails, how we feel about having teenagers soon, and what it was like for us turning 40, because all three of us are in our 40s. This is a great one. You can just sit back, listen to these moms chat because it is gold. So please enjoy. Stephanie and Vanessa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm very excited about this one. Why don't you start off and introduce yourselves? Let us know how old your kids are.
All right.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go first, Steph? I'll go first. I'm already talking. I'm Vanessa Anderson, and my children, my son's just turned 7 last month, and my daughter's halfway through 9. And yeah, I always wanted to have 2 children. They're the same order as my brother and I, and same age difference. Didn't plan that, so it's very relatable to me. Some of the situations that happen, especially for my daughter, because she's the older one, and so it's a very relatable experience for me. I've been enjoying it. I'm a single mother sometimes because my husband's profession, he's a firefighter. So sometimes I do a lot of do-it-yourself mess ups and do-it-yourself fix ups. So it's all the things. All the
Love
things.
it. Love it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Stephanie, and I have 2 kids, and they are the same order as Vanessa's kids, and our kids play with each other as well.
Oh,
I've got a 9.
heaven.
I know it.
Oh,
It aligned very nicely. My oldest is 9 and my youngest is 6. And I also have like a pseudo kid. We took in our 15-year-old nephew a few years ago. He's off to college now, but he lived with us for 3 years, and taking in a teenager without having experience raising
whoa.
teenagers was interesting, but he came to our house already as a good kid, but he was also a regular teenager. So there were those issues that you can think of, all of the regular teen things, but it's
Oh
just
my
kind of like
God.
a shock when it's like when you're dealing with little ones and then you bring that kind of energy in. It was actually a very nice welcoming energy to have so many different ages in my house. But yeah, I also love to write. I write a newsletter called Unpacking, and I basically unpack all different types of aspects, typically ones that are annoying or hard about the human experience.
Yeah. I didn't add to my resume. I just did the mom part. Let me add.
Well, as moms, we're like that, right?
Yeah.
We're like so
Yeah,
hyper-focused
totally.
on being mom. It's like, oh wait, there is more to me.
There's other things to me. Yeah. So besides, helping with this podcast, I teach a parent-child class in a Waldorf curriculum setting. I've been in the Waldorf movement for about, I don't know, oh God, 15 years now, I guess, plus. I specifically teach Spanish in the Waldorf curriculum. I love to teach yoga. I do that very minimally these days, just once a week, but it's still very much a part of me. And yeah, just I love do-it-yourself projects at home. We
Oh my
build
God.
everything
She's not
ourselves.
specific enough with that. She built a fucking house.
Wait, a house?
Yeah, so they have like a ADU, like, guest house, and
Oh
her and
my
her
gosh.
husband built it during the pandemic.
That is incredible. My
Yeah.
dad built the house that I grew up in, and then they ended up moving. But I'm always thinking like, oh my God, how did my parents do on like weekends? They were like, we would just
Yes.
go to Home Depot and like this weekend was the floor
Yes,
project.
exactly. So we
So,
just did it piece at a time, just learned a lot, first of all,
mhm.
and talk about marriage counseling, right? Like, especially as women, I'm like, okay, don't say that doesn't look very good. Like, how do I say we
Yep.
need to change that? And it's like I had to learn new ways to communicate.
Oh,
And
wow.
but it's also we're so proud of it. And we've helped a lot of young ladies out young in their careers to be able to afford to live in our area. So that's always
So
been
cool.
kind of our goal. So I always look for, someone that just got out of college or someone who's in the middle of college that doesn't have a budget to have their own place. So that's always been, we had that paid forward to us when we first moved to San Diego. It was a shock when we came from Arizona to
Mhm.
see, oh my God, our rent is how much? And our bed is next to our stove. Like
Yeah.
we were like, how
There's
is
no
this
yard.
gonna
There's
work out? Exactly. Like I'm gonna cook while I can take a nap at the same time. Like, what are we gonna do here? So my aunt actually had a friend and her mom had this little house that was condemned. And she's like, if you can fix it, you can live in it. So that was our first do it
wow.
yourself. So she gave us a great deal. And I thought, you know what? I told my husband someday when we can do this, and we're going to pay it forward to people to afford to live here and not only just give their whole check to where they live, actually be able to still live.
Mm,
So that's the whole purpose of behind that little house.
that is so awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's talk a little bit about becoming moms because on your podcast, you're just very open about real motherhood. So, what was it like becoming a mom? Was it what you expected or did it rock your world?
Yeah. You
I
go first.
always say that aren't we all the best moms before we're moms?
Yes, absolutely. I
Like
was
I would
such a good
never do
mom.
that to my
Yeah,
kid. I would
my
never
kids
do that.
never ate junk food.
Yeah.
Never.
And no, I think that that's probably the universal answer for every mom is it's never what we expect. Um, but I think the thing that I realized is that as a mom, I'm always re-examining how I how I do motherhood, and it's never what I expect each day. I'm like, okay, wait, that's not working for me and our family. Let's change it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that when before becoming a mom, I'm like, I'm just going to be this way for the rest of my kids' childhood, and I think it's probably a lot of has to do with how we were raised, and we're like, okay, we don't want to do it that way, the way that our parents did, and we're so hard pressed on the idea of what we don't want to do or what we do want to do based on our childhoods. And I think that that's another aspect of motherhood that I did not expect is like facing things that I dealt with as a kid
Mhm.
coming up,
Yeah.
becoming a mom.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's the part that you forget that that's gonna happen and it becomes intensely, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I'll echo. I definitely feel what Steph did. I was able to observe lots of families and also babysit lots of families in the school setting that I had. They'd be, hey, we trust you so much. Will you take our kids for the weekend? So would take them on. So I knew, okay, there's no break here. Like you got to be on all the time. But it was definitely, all your basic human needs were taken away right from the get-go, right? When you have your
Yep.
child, there was the body image stuff that happened. I was always really fit, so having to deal with that, and I didn't even think about that, like
Mhm.
loving your body and appreciating it took a while for me to say thank you for making this human. It's okay that my mole is, 2 inches below where it used to be on my right thigh. Like it's all good, like my breasts aren't what they were, but they gave food. Like it's so much of that process. But I also on the beautiful side, my children have made me realize the simplicity of life is what's best.
Mm.
The walks, the taking our time picking the dandelions, the taking our time to lay on the trampoline and look at clouds, the laughter, the giggling. I When I thought of these questions, I thought my children put a magnifying glass on time, and it stays still when you're in the moment with them, and when you're not you can feel it, and when you are in it with them you can feel life, and it's really worth living when you're in
Mm.
that precious
Mhm.
moment. And I think that's such a gift of being a mom that you cannot describe until you are in it. And I would say that is more than what I expected as
Yeah.
far as joy.
It's funny you say that because I'm thinking about some of the best days with my family has been when we're like, you know what? Let's screw all the plans that we wanted to do today and not do any of them.
Hmm.
And that's when we felt the most connection is just doing
Yeah.
nothing together at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
That makes me
simplicity,
think of
right?
summer break. I'm like, do I fill it with lots of
Yeah.
activities and like
Hmm.
camps and this, or do we just be and like
Hmm.
have
Yes.
brother time and,
Yes, I just read a book, and it was saying, we only have 18 summers with our children. And after that, it's, you'll see them 10% of their life and yours will be
Oh
spent
my
with them on
gosh.
holidays.
Dude,
You're
I
right.
wrote that down. I was like,
Yeah,
I
I
only have
know.
9 summers with my
Yeah.
daughter,
So putting
12
that,
with my son.
No way. I
putting
know
that
mine's
in
about to turn
perspective.
10. I'm like, oh my God, my oldest. No way.
Yeah. So it's like if we do, yes, we should, if our children are into something, send them to these beautiful spaces where they'll be enriched and stuff. But
Mhm.
for us to be like, we need to occupy every minute and it needs to be spent doing something. My personal opinion is no, it should be, really savoring the moment and connecting with your children if you can and have the time and the means to do it. Because there's mothers out there that do have to support, the whole
Right.
household and do have to work. And, when they can pause, it's not only a gift to the mother, it's a gift to the children because that's what we're doing it for. We're doing it to be present, to provide this consistent connection with this human being that you are sending off. And hopefully,
Mhm.
with your values and love representing themselves, because they'll have their own formulation of whatever you concocted those 18 years, or, the values that you all decided were yours in your household.
Yeah. And I look back at my childhood and my mom was so fun. Like she just always seemed like she was having so much fun. I asked her, I was like, was it hard? Like, was it really hard? She's like,
Yeah.
oh, it was draining. It was exhausting. I'm like,
Yeah.
but you seemed like you were loving it. I'm like, I hope my boys see that or like feel that behind
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
like, yes, to do this. I'm like, I hope they're still like, my mom was fun. It was fun growing up.
I
um,
think it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because
oh,
we are
totally.
also our 100% selves with our children, and sometimes we give them the brunt of our frustration,
Yes.
but they also get the excess of our joy. So it's a little bit of it all.
Mm, that's so sweet. Yeah. And yeah, I am totally myself in front of them. Like I can be myself.
I
So,
used
Yes.
to butcher myself over being myself in front of my kids because, they see the ugliest part and I have to
mhm.
remember, and I don't remember it sometimes, but then I do eventually, is like the importance of repair and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
the kids know cues too that like my son will go, "You have that look? You have that look?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." So
You
now I'm
were
like,
warned.
I know. So I'm like, do I go to the mirror real quick and freeze and be like, what is that look? Do I need to like relax my face?
But also like, yes, I am human. You guys, I am human.
Exactly.
Your noise
Exactly.
level is
Yeah,
making
you
my
didn't hear
human ears
them.
go crazy.
Respect our space here. Yeah.
Yes. 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 Okay. One thing I did not expect with motherhood was how lonely it was going to feel.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys making friends felt different becoming a mom. Did your friendships change? Did you guys know each other before becoming moms?
No.
Oh
And what's funny is we have like parallel lives that we literally, she's the Filipino version of
oh my
me, and I'm the
gosh.
Mexican version of her in some of our stages in life. We're like, me too, me too.
And
And I'm
your
like,
kids
her,
are the same. Yeah.
yeah, it's just crazy. We both moved to this area before we were pregnant, or you were
That's
pregnant.
before I was pregnant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't know anybody here, neither did Steph. Um, I did feel super lonely. My husband's always working. I was by myself.
Mhm.
My job was in another city. All my friends and that I hung out with were in the, hour away, and they didn't want to drive here
Mhm.
all the time. And I want to say that I honestly didn't start making friends until my daughter was able to make her own. So things that we would do, like going to the parent-child class that I now teach,
Oh.
or, any activities that we did if we connected with the mom that I sat next to all the time at dance, but my true core friends, I want to say, I'm going to be dead honest. I don't feel like I made them until 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years
Mm.
ago.
Yeah.
Ones that I can completely be vulnerable with, and the ones that I can have bad day and good days with and not feel judged but accepted and supported. I would say it's been about around COVID, so 3, 4 years.
Okay.
And Steph obviously is one of those, but
Mm.
that's how mine went. Hers is a great story. She's all about doing. You want to tell them how you met
Yeah.
her?
I was desperate for friendship.
Uh-huh. That's how I
I
felt.
Yeah, I mean, I worked from home before everybody worked from home. And I connected with my coworkers virtually, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And the first year of motherhood, I had pretty bad postpartum depression. And I got a dog, so I would have some sort of like live presence next to me. But I
Mhm.
was so desperate, I went onto Meetup and just I remember the name of the group was like North County Cool Moms and Dads. And so they were meeting at a brewery.
That's me.
Yeah, that's me. I'm cool. Let's go. So we went to Oceanside at a brewery, and there were just a bunch of other moms and dads who were desperate for friendship as well.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like speed dating. And I met a couple of friends from that, and that was probably like 8 years ago. And they've since moved
Wow.
across the world, and we're still really good friends. I've made friends also. One friendship I made was through Facebook. I was in the camp of baby sleep training,
Mhm.
my kid, and the very controversial baby wise method. I did that
Oh, yes.
because
Yep.
sleep is imperative to me, and it
Mhm.
worked for us. And there were these Facebook groups for other moms who do baby wise. And there was one mom whose older son was the same age as my daughter, and then her baby was like a week away from my baby. So like what we did was after we had our second, it was so nice because she was 2 hours ahead of me. She would send me a Facebook message and like, oh my God, I've been up since like whatever time the baby pooped on me, all of these things. And then I get up 2 hours later when it was time to feed, middle of the night. And I'm like, there's someone that's out there that is
Yeah.
alive. Cause when you're in
Yes.
the middle of like newborn phase, you're like, I'm
Ugh.
up at 2 a.m. and I swear nobody else is awake
Yep.
except.
Yeah.
And
Definitely not my husband. Oh.
yes. Yeah. And so I made connections there, but then
Mhm.
also just same school, but like a lot of the friendships that we have made here at our school, a lot of us were not ready for like close friendship until like a year or two ago.
Yeah. We're just saying, like, it's another, even though it's a beautiful benefit, it's something else to maintain. You have to create
Mhm.
time for your friends,
Yes.
and it nourish that. It's a relationship that you have to constantly give to, and it's a exchange, right?
Mhm.
And she's absolutely right. Most moms aren't ready, not because they don't want to. It's just you don't have the time. You're tired.
Something.
Mhm.
Yep.
You just
Mhm.
And it's just
don't.
there's so much going on. Like my
Mhm.
best friend, I've known her since high school. And the amount of time we see each other is like, oh, it's been 3 months now. Just because her kids
Yeah.
are in school, mine are in school. We have sports, we have that. It's for me, it was the like making time to see people.
Yeah.
And I did feel like when mine were younger, it was a little bit easier because you could just say, hey, I'll meet you at the park. Cool.
Right.
Now
Yes.
Mhm.
they're in school and it's like, oh, wait, they have homework now and they have this, but I still have one
Mhm.
home and you don't have any home. That has like that shocked me about elementary school. Was just
Absolutely.
like, oh, wait, now we see each other less and our kids are in school.
I know.
It's a good one though when you don't see each other in a while, and you see each other and it's just like you pick up right where you left
Yeah.
off.
Well, I saw her last night at baseball and I had 10 minutes between getting there and then having to be in the dugout doing parent duty. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, ready? We have 10 minutes, go. And we was just
Yeah.
like speed talking, like, fill me in, let me know. I want to know what it is.
Yeah. I think that
So,
I also think the important thing about friendships was I made friends like at yoga and stuff, and some people didn't have kids, and the dynamic of that was just a little off. Like
yeah.
it wasn't horrible, but it was just hard for them to relate, or
Mm.
it's just different.
I
It,
love hanging out with kids or people who have no kids. I love it because I
why?
love non-mom talk
Uh,
so much. Well, it's funny because I like the podcasts I listen to are not they're not mom podcasts very often. They're like single women who have no kids. And I don't know, I
like,
just
oh
love
man.
hearing the young voice, and I just love hearing just another perspective that's not motherhood
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the hard part was just trying to sync up like meeting because I had children
Mhm.
and I had no one I trusted at the time to babysit
Yeah.
my kids. So
Yeah.
it was like, I do want to spend us just one-on-one
Yeah.
time, but it's hard to find time. So it was that.
It is fun though, finding that friend who doesn't have kids, who doesn't mind being around
And
your
that
kid.
too.
Yeah.
That's really
That's
nice.
cool. Those are
That's really nice.
treasures. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
sometimes it's not so.
Yeah.
Well, I found that podcasts early on in motherhood became my friend. Like my son would get up at
Yeah.
probably 5 in the morning. So I would just throw them in the stroller, go for a walk. And it was these podcast women. At the time, I was listening to a lot of mom podcasts.
Mhm.
And those just became my friends. I was like, I need to know these people. Like you'd follow
Yeah.
them on Instagram and you're like, oh my God, my friend, just because it's
Yeah,
so
I know these
funny.
parasocial relationships are so interesting.
Mhm.
Like, okay, I just want to hang out with Katie. So let me
Yeah.
just press
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
5 in the
lucky.
morning. Oh, okay. Let's listen to her. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Okay. So we are all in our 40s. That was a very big adjustment for me. And the more I talk to like some friends who are about to turn 40,
Mhm.
we all kind of have similar feelings about that. How was it for you guys turning 40?
Mm. I think it was a mixed bag, but it was a happy bag too. But other things started bagging. Okay, so there's a mixed bag, right? So I think that I feel really confident inside of who I am and who I'm not. I had this like I know I call it middle life pause, not middle life crisis,
Oh, I
because
like that.
it was more like I looked back and I was like, okay, this is where I've come from and this is where I'd like to go, and really reassessing where am I going to spend my time now? Like
Mm,
what's important? What can I start taking out that is not worth my time? And same, I did an assessment of the people I want to be around and the person I want to be. I was also, like, okay, and I'm gonna give credit to Steph for encouraging me, not encouraging me like saying you should do this, but she has let her hair go, naturally gray for the past couple years, and I just started doing mine, and it was like letting go. Not saying that you have to do this, but it was been very liberating to just say this is who I am, and I'm great for that, and just to like going back to what I said, thanking my body for what it's done so far, and then saying, hey, we still got more to go. Like we're gonna do great things, and I'm not, you know, ugly because I'm 40. I'm beautiful because I'm 40. I feel great because I'm 40. But then I was also thinking, my dad walked me down the aisle when he was 42 because he was a
oh
young
my
dad. So it's like putting that into perspective that I'm still raising my kids. I'm like, I'm old. I'm
yes,
getting older here. Like,
yes.
and also realizing that, you can still have a juicy love life and a juicy just life in general.
Mhm.
And yeah, and there's funny things too. Like now I to see my husband, intimately, it's here. It's like you got to zoom out a little bit. And I'm kind of like, is that on purpose? Because we're getting wrinkles. We still look great. It's like the,
See a
the,
little
the dark
distance here.
bar. It's the dark bar look when you're this close. But no, I really celebrating it. But I did have a moment where I was like, oh my God, these lines are getting deeper. I'm just being straight up. Like I don't look the way I used to, but I think that's why I'm working so hard inside to say this is all gonna change, but my heart and soul will not. That's the way
Yes,
it can still be me.
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I read that studies show, where did I read that? Okay, so studies show that women over 40 are more confident and they have a decrease in self-criticism,
Oh,
um, which I feel like is representative of me
mhm.
as well. Um, that and I sweat differently, I smell differently.
I forgot to go
It's
on.
weird, but you know what's really cool? And I feel like I have a friend who is talking about starting this website to really like showcase products and services for women who are going through perimenopause
Mhm.
or menopause. And she's like, it's weird. There's nothing out there like this. And I'm like, yeah, because no one cares about aging women.
Yeah.
And
You're not allowed to age.
yeah,
No, we're like thrown
Reverse
to the
it.
side. We have to be
Yeah.
fresh our whole lives, or we can't breed anymore. You can't
Mhm.
make
Or like
babies.
aging is bad. It's like,
mhm.
no,
Yeah,
why
no,
not?
it's not.
Right.
And I don't know, I feel like the more we talk about it, we're like, okay, it's happening and it's okay. And I don't know, I find lovely comic relief in us revealing to each other like what weird things are happening to our bodies.
Mhm.
But it's also really cool because we do by expressing these things, it is proving that we are having more self-confidence to just be able to just really express that.
Totally. Like I texted her last week or a week ago, and I'm like, I totally was the loud fart in yoga. Like, and I didn't even mean to fart. Like, just this
Dropped
is
out of you.
happening. I was just like getting in there, tucking my pelvic floor, and out it came. And I'm like, I wasn't even embarrassed. I feel like so good about that.
Yeah. I love how you described it though as a midlife pause, because that was kind of like the 6 months leading up to it for me was like, oh my God. I think for me, because I had my last at like almost 39. So
Mm.
then it just kind of felt like the end of like the baby, like the having kids stage. And I wasn't quite
Yeah.
ready to transition to like, oh, now we're just raising the kids. But my mom had said like my 40s were my favorite. I loved my 40s. And I was like, how did you love your 40s? I get it now because it's like I feel more free. I have, my kids can buckle their seatbelts now. Like that is
Yeah.
heaven.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you're right, the confidence. It's like I'm constantly working on that, but it's like, why can't we age? Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Why?
need to like get rid of these wrinkles. It's because I smile. I spend
Yeah.
time
I'm
in the
happy.
sun. Why? I
Yeah.
love the beach. Like, yeah.
So my neighbors are the coolest retired couple. Like when I see them, like retirement goals.
Yes.
And when I
I
talk to
have
her about,
I have some.
yeah, when I
Mhm.
talk to her about being 40, she's like, oh, you are such a baby. Just you wait.
Just
My
wait till the
favorite
50s.
were the 50s and the 60s. And I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We need to hear
Like,
more
I
of
need to hear
that.
more of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, baby boomers have paved the way for the new way to see the elders because I feel like their parents kind of aged quickly, like in their 40s and 50s. I don't know if it's because we were young, but then I look
Mhm.
back and I'm like, my grandma was really 40 in that picture. She looked a little older. Like, just, you know
That
what I mean?
hairdo? What?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
what'd you do that for? But, they're just still like, they're still actively saying, yes, we're still having sex. Yes, I'm still going to yoga. I am eating
Mhm.
healthy. Like, there's this new wave of, just
I'm
preserving
in my
what you've
prime.
got. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
preserving what you got. And like my husband goes, we're just getting older. That's what's going to happen. And it's okay. And I
Yeah.
think it's great for my husband to embrace, him aging and telling me I'm beautiful as we're aging. It's nice to like laugh about it too. Like, oh my God, that was totally an old fart moment. Like,
Mhm.
it's to embrace it together is nice. And he's not, a partner that says you should be dyeing your hair or, I'm
Mhm.
sure that there is some of that for some people, which is unfortunate, but this is life,
Yep.
we are right now are what the seasons, we're like in the beginning of fall where everything's blooming and it's like ripe and delicious. I think
Yes.
that's what 40 is.
Love
Yeah.
that. Yes. I think too, it hit me like right around 40, a few people passed away in my life. And I started looking at my mom and I'm like, my mom's getting older.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
you start thinking like in your 20s, it's like your life is going on forever. In your
Yeah.
40s, you're like, okay, like I need to make sure I'm living it up right now. Like I need
Right.
to enjoy, I'm not going to waste my time anymore. I'm going to enjoy this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's, if you could
I
in one sentence, that would be it.
I think it happens that way for a reason. I think cognitively, when we're 20, we can't grasp
Nope.
that. We're so in the moment. We're so, yeah, I think that the way that our bodies go and our brains go and the ages that we are, it just makes sense. Whoever this creator is did that
Mm-hmm.
on purpose.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And having kids later than previous generations, I think did. I think it's keeping us young. So I'm like, my youngest is not going to graduate till I'm in my 60s. Like I'm going to have to stay young because he's
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
this young
Keep
kid.
up with it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. Okay. So
Young
on my
energy.
podcast, I really want to make it clear that, motherhood, we're just making mistakes all the time.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to share some of your best mom fails with us?
Oh my God, where do you want us to go? That
Maybe
was a lot.
your top one.
I think honestly, I was like, first of all, I was like, where do my top conflicts of needing to learn on fails stem from? And that was when I'm tired or I have like this podcast sometimes will take over my mind and I'll be in the middle of
Mhm.
it and my kids want my attention and I'll get frustrated. And not only that, I am not fully connecting with my child. Say like they're talking to me, but in my mind, I'm thinking
Mhm.
about something else.
Yep.
That's a start fail right there. And then they'll be like, hey, I told you this. And then I'm like, oh my God, they did. And I didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention. So it frustrates them. And so then it's just like how we are with our husbands. If you're talking to your husband and you're like, hey, are you listening to me? Like our kids feel that too. Like our
Yeah.
kids know that when we're not on with them. I feel like I have noticed I've done that the last 6 months, I felt like trying to juggle everything I do, had that fail. And where I felt the most, that seems topical right now, but I'll give you an example now. I'll get juicy. My daughter was, telling me something that really hurt her feelings about an experience she had at school, and I wasn't fully present for her. And because I wasn't fully present for her, it really hurt her even more. She was already hurt. So I feel like that made me feel like crap.
How did she call you out in the moment?
Yeah, she was kind of like, Mom, like my reaction wasn't as sincere as it could have been if I was in the moment. Like I'm usually a very physical person, so I would probably have hugged her more or held her hand, and I was not. And that's when I was like, woman, to my own advice, you gotta be prioritizing these children
Yeah.
instead of your mind being off to the next project. And I know we're in a world where we're constantly looking at our phones, doing this, doing that. And then so it's like when you're on with your kid, it's like you're trying to still be there, but you're on to the next. So I had to really stop and think about that. You know what I mean? And the other thing is when I am already frustrated, say I didn't, same thing. If it's not with sleep, forget it. I am not patient. So say it's just been a bad morning or a bad day. And then my child comes with the conflict and I'm trying to have them do something. Maybe it's a chore or something they're responsible for and they're resisting to me. I have noticed that where I'm learning, and I've learned since, but still am practicing, is that banter. I'm like, I'm bantering with the 9-year-old. Like I am literally making a 9-year-old argument. Like I'm not going to win this and she's not going to win this. And I wrote this down that, she's learning what conviction is. Like, she's like, there's a judge, there's a jury. And she's trying to convince, the judge and the jury that she's right about whatever's happening right then and there. And I'm like, okay, pause button. It's not about who's right or wrong. Let's look at the situation. What are we learning? Whose needs need to be met? And why isn't she doing what she's doing? That's the real problem. So it's managing all those little things. And sometimes it's hard. Like you're not your best self. Like I might roll my eyes or I might, not have the best response. Like I might put my hands up in the air and be like, I just don't know what to do right now. Or I'll say, like I need my space. And it's frustrating, especially when I'm by myself, like just to take that pause and be like, I don't want them to think I'm giving up. So I come back and I'll say, okay, I cleared my head and I understand that this is what you meant. And then there's some times when I've let that moment pass, like I didn't know what to say. And I would say, I'm still learning from that. There's moments where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do here. You're gonna have to beep that out. I'm sorry. I just don't. And it's a new situation. I'll talk to my friends. I'll talk to my husband. I'll reevaluate it. And I will have dates with my kids once I have. And I'll say, you know what? Do you remember this moment? I would like to apologize for it. And this is what I could have done better. That's how I've been trying to repair those moments. But yeah, for me, it's like the more getting the children to do things. And I'm learning that it's not getting them to do things. It's showing them it's in your value and in your rhythm, right? To do those things as a family. So I've been implementing that a little bit more because being busy, it doesn't become the rhythm. It's more like just get it done. So I'm trying to slow that down for my family, but that's where my current conflict is, I guess. Pick up your underwear, pick up the bathroom, all those good things. Yeah.
And it's so hard when you think, like, just listen to me. Like, I know we just need to have this bathroom cleaned up. Why are we fighting
Yeah,
about this?
exactly. Exactly.
Do you ever find yourself where you're like, wow, the only things I've said to my kids is orders, barking orders.
Yeah.
No
Why am I
connection.
like
Or
that,
no,
Mom?
no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop.
And
Don't
that's
do
the
that.
thing. Yes, exactly. That's when it gets ugly for everybody because you're not making that connection. Saying, hey, what are you doing right now? And then connecting. Oh, that looks lovely that you're playing with those Legos. But sometimes it's not always like that. You're like, hey, you left your undies in the bathroom instead of.
And I
We
told
don't
you
like
5
being
times.
ripped. Yeah, and we don't like being ripped out with what we're doing when they come ask us. It's the same for them. There's
Right.
no difference, and we forget.
Mm-hmm.
We
We're
forget.
human. Yeah.
We're human.
Okay, so my fail has to do with anger issues. I grew up with a dad who was really, really angry all the time. And we lived in a house where it was like we're dealing with someone who's incessantly shouting or silent treatment for weeks. And so it's funny when you have kids of your own, you're so convinced you're never going to do that. And I was talking to some friends about how it's really weird and crazy feeling like when I get into these rageful moments when I just erupt at my kids. I was talking about how, and I wrote about this recently, how it feels like my dad is channeling through me. It's like almost like the rage isn't coming from me, it's coming from my dad, and it's being directed toward my kids, it's when I told a couple of friends about this, they're like, you should pull energetic cords. And I'm like, what is that woo-woo stuff that you're talking about? But I went to see this woman. She did pulling energetic cords is just basically this way to say that like someone works with you to like pull away bad energy that may not be serving you. So if this bad energy was, this anger that I'm still holding on from my childhood. And, we did this weird ritual and pulled out these imaginary cords, sent it to the earth. And then after leaving that session, I'm like, how am I going to know if this works? And I'm like, I went to bed that night thinking like, okay, I guess I won't know if this works for a while. And the next morning, as I was getting ready for school with the kids, my kids were being normal kids, saying normal things like, I don't want that apple, I want a pear, can you get me a spoon? And I was noticing as they were saying these things that normally when they say these things, I'm filled with tiny rage. Like, I'm like, you get the spoon yourself, like in my head, right?
Can't you ask me nicely? Can you
Yeah,
ask, not
and
demand?
exactly. And I realize that I'm filled with all this like mini rage all the time that I keep inside. And I'm wondering like, wow, do I do this? And then one day that I can't handle it anymore, it just comes out. And so that session really just made me realize like, oh, I've got this like other anger that I didn't even realize that I need to work on. But anyway, that morning I felt neutral about all the things they said that morning.
Wow.
But I think that session worked because it gave me information. It gave me awareness of like the anger that's inside me and the anger that I can work on healing.
Right.
I don't think that it's new to any parent that they feel bad that they've yelled at their kids. Yeah,
We've all yelled at our
We
children.
all do it.
We're
We all have
human.
that moment where we're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, my throat is vibrating right now. And when you're done with it, you're like, your mouth, it's like it's kind of like after you throw up, you're like, it feels better. But then you're like, but then it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
And
That
it
was
is.
not
It is.
pleasant. Right.
It is our childhood
catching up to us.
catching up to us. And it's whatever stage your child is in where you had the most difficulties tends to when you whatever you had a difficult say you had a difficult time at 8, and when your child becomes 8, that might be the time you have the most difficult time raising your child because you're still dealing with your stuff.
Oh, interesting.
So with that theory, my nightmares are going to be happening in the teenage years.
Well, that's okay. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
What stage of motherhood? So, like, are you looking forward to the teen years? Like, have you enjoyed the baby stage and then you're like, oh no, that's coming? How are you feeling about
I
the
did not
upcoming?
enjoy the baby stage.
I think that's
And I
totally
felt
fine to admit too. Some
yeah,
people are like, I hate to admit this. And I'm
yeah.
like, oh my God, no, it was hard.
It's hard to say that out loud because I felt like lesser of a mom because I did not enjoy my children as babies. And I felt like, what's wrong with me?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can't talk to them.
I'm a mom. You're supposed to love every
I'm
minute
a
of
great
this.
conversationalist, and conversing with a 1-year-old is impossible.
Yes.
I feel like I I don't know. I'm just taking each phase as they come and deal with it as they come. I'm trying not to worry about the later. Like I told
Mhm.
you, we had our teenage nephew move in with us when he was 15. And I think that the biggest thing that I realized is that these earlier years are so important because we're so hands-on. They want to be with us. It's not like when they're teenagers, it's not necessarily that they don't want to be with us, but they're figuring out who they are. So I remember like I used to be like, what are we doing wrong when he'd come home and shut the door, to his
Yes.
room. And I read somewhere that says like they're not shutting the door on you, they're opening the door to themselves.
Oh,
When
That's
when they're
awesome.
say
That's
when they're like keeping to themselves,
right. Someone told me too, with teens, don't take anything
Mhm.
personally. Don't take it
Yeah.
personal. Like what they say, how they
Absolutely.
act. And it's like, yeah, that's a total example of that. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I guess my answer to that would be, and I seem like I'm always dipping my toes in two sides, but I do like my life every day. I like to, when I review my life at the end of the day, I look at both ends of the coins. I'm like, well, that end of the coin needs to be polished, and that end of the coin's pretty shiny.
yes.
So I would say that I've enjoyed it all thoroughly so far. Like I loved being a mom. I loved breastfeeding and having connections with my kids and having them play with my necklaces and talking to them and just seeing the world through their little eyes and seeing all the stages. Um, I would say the hardest time was when my children started to verbalize and they were between 3 and 4 and, telling me no,
Yeah.
that thing
Yeah.
and trying to be like, okay, well, I'm going to be firm but loving, that kind of thing. I do look forward to the teenage years because I feel like that's when, like, piggybacking on what Steph just said, they are their own human beings and they're discovering themselves. So being able to form a relationship with who they're becoming and being able to travel more and do
Mhm.
more of the worldly experiences that maybe I haven't even experienced and sharing it with them. And I remember actually that was probably the best relationship I had with my parents. I feel like they were young parents. So from like, I don't know, 11 and under, I told them I gave you all a C minus. And I'm saying this because I've told them that. But from 11 plus, I feel like my parents were definitely a strong B plus A minus. I felt like they were upfront with me about life. They also protected me and told me, this is the reality of this, but, gave it to me when I was ready. So I look forward to that part. I feel like the stage that my daughter is in now is when I had the hardest time as a child. So that's why I feel like I'm working on that right now. And I'm arguing with her because I'm arguing with myself.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I think that looking forward to, how you helped create this child, but really they're their own entity and really getting to know what they're going to have to offer, already hearing their dreams and just, being able to have that. And on the other hand, though, I'm not looking forward to, I don't know, like the restrictions of this is the time you have to be home and really being like, I want to trust so, much that when they're in the car, they're going to do the right thing when they're
Mhm.
not going to be on their
Mhm.
phone, like letting go those strings of natural stress that you're worried about when your children are out. Are they going to be looking around and, as a boy or girl, if, they go to the store late, it's stuff
Oh
we
my
have
God.
to do.
That was such a shock when our nephew came to live with us. He's like, "When do you want me home?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, we have
Oh,
we have
Yeah.
to decide
curfew
that?
now."
It's another thing. And even my daughter, my daughter's like, when am I gonna be able to be like dropped off? Yeah, I'm like, is it 13, And I told her, you know what, it
Mhm.
might be around 13, but as you show me that you can handle things, that's when I will give them to you. They're opportunities
Yeah.
because it depends on them, right?
Yep.
So anyway,
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's letting go. I think that's gonna be the hard part for me is their own.
Well, and be okay with the expectation that they have to mess up so they
Yeah.
actually learn, because that's
Yeah.
how
They're
I mean,
going
that's how I
to.
operate. It's like
Yeah.
I have
Mhm.
to mess up to learn exactly what I need to do next
They're like,
time.
your mom's like, it's hot, it's hot. You're like, it's hot. Touching, touching,
Gotta
feeling,
verify
doing.
it
You're gonna
myself.
learn. You're gonna learn
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast because it is so fun to listen to. How did it come to be? How did you guys decide to start a podcast? And
All right, true story. So here we go. I have when I was pregnant, I was journaling and kind of manifesting like these experiences like, okay, this is what it's like to be a first time mom. The honesty I was writing down was like some of it was embarrassing. I'm like, this is
Mhm.
happening in my body. This is what's going through my mind. And then as it was going, I was like, okay, now I kept journaling and deep inside, I'm like, this would be fun to share this like in a
Yeah.
real time journaling kind of conversation. And it kind of sat with me. Did mention to my husband and it was always a back burner, like, you should do it, you should do it. And it was always like, it was always the last thing I would give energy to. So it never manifested. Like at the end of the day, I'm
Mhm.
like, I just want to sleep. I didn't
Mhm.
want to do anything else. So
Yes.
it came to the point my kids were old enough now, they were at school. I was able to have my own thoughts without being interrupted. And able to hang out with great friends. We went to a medium on my 40th birthday. So first circle with
Ooh.
that question number 2 you gave us. Um, had never gone, never had really, and never really had a feeling of I need to go to medium. I need to go
Yeah.
to psychic. I was like, eh. But I was like, well, why not? One of my friends knew her and
I'm
she's actually
40.
been on our podcast. Yeah, I was like, it's 40, it's
Oh,
something fun to do. And
yeah.
so we went to Kelly and I went with Steph and our other friend Sarah, and we had a little day. And she told me, she goes, you're an entrepreneur at heart, and that dream you've been manifesting, you need to make it happen. It's going to be successful.
Whoa.
And I
Who
always
does
wanted
get
to come.
channeled through? Was it with your uncle?
It was just through Kelly,
Oh, it was through Kelly. Okay.
just through Kelly. Yeah. And
Mm.
so I was like, okay, but I always wanted to co-host like you.
Mhm.
And I was like, I just love that banter. I
Yeah.
love, because I feed off of it. It's just something that I love to have. And I've ever since I had the first conversation with this gal, I was like, I love talking to her. Like,
Yes.
she knows my humor, we get each other. And so right after that, we were at lunch and I'm like, hey, you know that thing she's talking about at the
You're in
meeting I was
that.
talking
You're
about? I'm
involved.
like, you want to do that with me? You want to I want to do a podcast. And she was just like, yes. And what this was like, I don't know. We had a slumber party. We have slumber parties sometimes. And because our kids have slumber parties, and she comes over and
Fun.
my husband's gone and we do business trips. And I said, what made you say yes? She said, I said yes to you. And that was such a gift that she said that. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God. But anyway, from then we had meetings and just kind of I messed around with some titles. I was
Yeah.
like, and our title, Real Motherfuckers, was the third one. It was supposed to be a joke. And Steph goes,
She thought, yes.
that one, that's the one. I'm like, all right. And we
Yes.
were like, there it is. The rest is kind of
Love that. Well, that's
history.
what you were journaling about, the real stuff that no one really
Mhm.
talks
The
about
real stuff
anymore.
that's embarrassing and
Mhm.
uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
it's not just a motherhood
It's
podcast.
fun.
That's what we're realizing. It's a podcast about all things, difficult and beautiful in life
Mhm.
that we would like to share, because there's people who feel alone and not heard and not seen, and they think oh, well, am I the only one feeling this? Am I abnormal? Just saying, no, you're not. Like, you're
Yep.
not abnormal.
Yeah.
These are feelings that you're allowed to have. And now we're trying to share. We have also professionals that come on our podcast that talk to, about, so, we're going to have a crisis counselor on how to deal with that, how to deal with grief, what kind of birth do you want to have? We have specialists. We have dads that have been on. We've had a
Yeah.
sex traffic victim that's been on, and how she survived and what happened during her life to lead her to that being what happened to her. So it's a plethora of a lot of things, I
God, giving
guess,
a
and
voice to all these stories. It's
a
I
incredible.
mean,
voice to it.
I feel like I want to ask you too, is like that with your podcast, isn't it incredible how much we learn from all of our guests? And it's
Yes.
more than I ever
Yes.
thought that I
Yes.
would learn.
And like each person that reach out to you, you're like, oh my God, yeah. Like I have someone coming on talking about divorce, and you're like, yes. Like, how do you navigate that with kids? Or,
Yes.
whoa, your child's going blind. How do you deal
Yes.
with that? Like,
How
it's
do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
incredible.
It's
Mhm.
incredible. Yeah. And I feel like we take a part of, not a part of them, but they become a part of us, and we become a part of them.
Yeah.
And I also think that, and I see that you're in your platform, you're doing it as well, but it's not like, if you added labels to us politically and everything, like Steph and I are not like, oh yeah, we check all those boxes. There's differences between what we believe. And I think we're trying to say it's okay to not believe those things in a world where if you don't, you're not the friends anymore, or you
Mhm.
don't talk to anybody anymore. It's like, no, we can talk about it. This is how I came to the conclusion to believe that this should be right, or we should vote this way, or I believe these people should have rights, and whatever it is. It's nice to not yell. It's nice to listen, and it's nice to see how someone came to the conclusion that that is right for them,
Yeah.
and that it's okay to not agree, and do it in a respectful way. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to also showcase on our podcast, is that
Mhm.
level of respect, and trying to understand, and being like, you know what, I might not still agree with you, but I respect you, and I'm one step closer to holding, to reaching out the hand and be like, let's meet halfway.
Yeah. Amen.
Let's
We
meet
need that
halfways.
this year, right?
Yeah,
We
we
need that.
do. We do.
Especially this year. Yes. Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we want to find your podcast, how do we find you?
Well, we're on all platforms. We have a website too, if you want to check us out there. It's www.realmotherfuckerspodcast.com.
Awesome.
We're on
And
Instagram.
we have a video podcast as well. So you can check us out on YouTube, video on
YouTube.
Spotify. We're on Apple.
Follow them
Yeah,
on
find us
Instagram. That's where I found you guys.
Yeah.
I know, you too.
Instagram is
Yeah, I love
Real
it.
Motherfuckers Podcast. So
Yeah. Yeah,
And
we do shenanigans, you know, we play around. I love making people laugh, and I love laughing in the process. So
Yes.
I have roped her in, and she's the last post was she wrote me in. She's like, we got to do this nighttime thing while we're here in Nashville. But it's like it's fun, you know,
Yeah.
it's fun
Right.
to make someone smile, and I
Right.
really think that's
yeah,
one of
Vanessa's
the
I think
working on
that's
one
why
about
we
hairy
connected,
legs.
because I've tried to do like the warm and fuzzy social media, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I just want to make people laugh. Like I just,
Yeah.
we need to
It
find more
makes
humor.
you funny. Like she was saying, I'm trying to wrap my head around about hairy legs in the springtime and like being real about pale hairy legs.
Oh, do it.
So
Oh, that would be a
I'm
good
trying to
one.
find, you know, if you guys go to our Instagram, you got any suggestions for music? I'm working on it right now. I don't
Okay.
have
Oh,
to,
you've
I'm
got to
gonna
do
have to
it.
write this one on my own.
Like a
do
Sasquatch coming out of the
yeah,
forest.
something. I don't know. Right now I'm trying to, my husband's gonna be like, what? I need to film your legs.
Okay, wait, is he on social media? Because my husband's not on Instagram, and that I think is why I'm like, okay, he doesn't see what I'm doing, and that's cool. Like, I don't need you
Yeah.
to follow this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
just go do your work thing.
Yeah, no, my husband does not have Instagram anymore. He's a very introverted person.
Same as
And
my husband.
yeah, it's just, you know, we try to respect them as well. Or if I say, hey, I might mention this, are you okay with it? I get permission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So-
oh, I'll just do my thing over here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I know
He already
sometimes like
knows.
a random person at football was like, oh, I think I saw you. Are you that burnt pancake? And I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah. Like people in my real life can see that. I forget.
Isn't
I
that
forget
a
that.
weird phenomenon?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is really weird. I wanted to ask you, how did you come up with your name?
Okay, so I was potty training my oldest son, and it was a nightmare. He just pooped his pants all the time. And I was hanging out with my good friend Megan. We would just hang out in her backyard like every evening. Both our husbands worked late. And so it'd be like, bring your kids over at 3, they'll play, we'll feed them, and then you can go home and put them to bed. And he pooped his pants in her backyard again. And I was like, oh my God, I am dying. And she's like, Kate, don't worry about it. Everyone burns their first pancake. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
the moment. I don't know why it struck me so much, but it was like, I don't have to be perfect. It's
I love that.
okay. It is okay if I'm screwing this one up. And
Yeah.
my second and my third, like,
Yeah.
so when I was trying to come up with the concept of like, we're moms, we're making mistakes, it's okay. And I went through again, all the names, like everything was taken. There's like a domain for everything that you
Yeah.
want.
Yes.
And then I looked at my husband, I was like, what about like, you know, everyone burns their first pancake, like burnt pancakes. And so we went with
Mhm.
that. So
I love
and
it.
then he
I
was
love
like,
that.
are you sure we're buying a website called Burnt Pancakes? Yes. But you're right. It was that like inner knowing. I was like, yes, I'm doing this. I don't know where it's going, but
Yeah.
yes.
It's called
doing
the mom instinct.
It
the
is.
mom gut.
And
It
we
was
feel
totally
it.
it. Yeah. And that led me to quitting my teaching job and, you know, crazy road. But it was that 40s midlife pause that I was like, something's got to change.
That's
Like,
right,
I
girl.
can't just
Pause,
keep-
pause,
I
pause
just
and
can't keep doing
repeat.
that. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
good for you. I love that story. I think that's
Yay.
really cute. I love it. That
Good. I was like, because
yes.
my friend's like, are people going to think it's like a cooking show? And I'm like, oh God, I hope not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put it
Yeah.
out there, you put the feeling, and
Mhm.
people will
Right.
feel it. For
Right.
real.
So
Yeah, it's
true.
great.
Well,
So
I
great.
wish you guys the best of luck with your podcast. And I
Thank
so
you.
appreciate having you guys on. This was awesome. So everyone, please go listen to the podcast. These two ladies were such a joy to talk to. I think you're going to have so much fun. I follow them on social media too, and I love their content. So go check them out. And if you haven't already, go watch some of these episodes on YouTube, because I have a YouTube channel where all of these episodes are videoed and you can come watch us. Come follow me on social media. Follow the podcast, get ready for another momversation, because I've got another one coming out Friday and I love having you here. So until next week, I want to remind you that everyone burns their first pancakes. So just keep flipping.